Hey guys, I thought I'd do a quick video. Right. I thought I'd do a video on the MFJ-564 Iambic paddles and talk about the misery I had initially with them and what I've done to correct the deficiencies. I've had the paddles for maybe 7 years now, and it seems like the first 6 months were misery. With paddle spacing changing with temperature changes, it was terrible. I noticed a spacing change from day to night, and maybe I'm overly sensitive because I'm a CW op, but probably not, you know. So, if I were to have to make an initial recommendation, I highly recommend PBR for your wobbly pop needs and desires. The MFJ-564 can be made into a very nice paddle, a very suitable paddle if you're mechanically inclined. Okay? Before we get started, Blowzo would like to issue a propo report, okay? Hey guys, the bands are shit. Okay, so I'm going to pause you. I'll be doing a bit of pausing, and you'll see a lot of scene cuts because it's going to be kind of tricky for me to position things. I'll do the best I can. Okay, hang on. Okay, the first thing I noticed when I got the paddle from MFJ was that the spring, which originally wrapped around that post, didn't provide nearly enough tension. Not nearly enough tension. And so initially I figured, well, I'll get a heavier spring. I've seen paddles that had a slot milled here so you could move that post back and forth. You know, one would think they might have done that, but no. So I bought a heavier spring, and it did nothing to increase the tension. I couldn't believe it. And so I got a third spring, even heavier, and it did nothing to change the tension, and I was baffled. You'll notice, by the way, that the star of the show has been cleaned for this presentation, and I've taken a shower already, and it's only March. Okay, so that was the spring issue. You'll see what I've done. I've just stretched the spring out and cut it after many attempts at playing around with the thing. But this I did after I realized the cause of the tensioning nightmare. Okay, let's reposition you. Hang on. Okay. Now, let me grab a finer pointer because I've got to point out something that's really small. You're really zoomed in, obviously. So, you know where the spring attachment points were? Obviously. I've got to look around the camera so I can see what I'm pointing at. Here are the original spring attachment points. The spring would come through that yoke. It's called a yoke. And loop around there and loop around that one. And the problem is, are you mechanically inclined? Very mechanically inclined? If so, you can probably see the problem. That's a pivot point, that's a pivot point for this split yoke. That's the pivot point. Look where the spring attached. Now the spring wouldn't ride way down here because it's got some thickness. It's going to ride up around here, right in line with the pivot. no matter how much tension you put on that at that point, it changes nothing. It changes nothing. The spring attachment point has to be farther away from the pivot in that direction. You know, and that's what I've done. I just opened up the ends of the springs a little and bent them as needed so that I could loop them around this metal piece that holds your contact. I looped it around there. Once I did that, it was a difference between day and night. Now spring tension changes, definitely changed the feel of the paddle. And all I did was then play with the springs. You can individually, that's a nice thing about a cut spring. I can change the dit and da paddle individually. And all I did was screw with the springs. You can see how I've stretched this one out a little bit, stretch this one out a little in here, whatever. I just give the string a pull, spring a pull, and put it back on and try it again. Eventually I found a tension setting that I really liked, actually. Okay, I'm going to reposition you and find out, zoom in on the next point. Hang on. Okay, let's look at the geometry of things. You see, when all is said and done, this spacing adjustment screw here must be perfectly perpendicular to that piece of metal that holds your other contact. You want them perfectly perpendicular. If they're not, when you go to make spacing changes, it won't be smooth. It'll get closer and closer and closer, then boom, a mile away. And then, you know, you'll go mad. That's how that geometry should be. These split yokes, now you can see this one's perfectly parallel with this yoke. This one is not. It just so happens with my key, and I don't know why, when I make this one straight in line like that, it doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. So these ideally should end up parallel with this, and I'm going to reposition things and show you the screw responsible for that. I'm going to tip you down first. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to reposition things and show you the screw that's responsible for moving this in and out and changing the angle of them. Okay, hang on. Okay, this top screw, boy, that's tricky. That top screw is responsible for moving this split yoke in and out as it pivots around this pivot point, thus making this perpendicular with this. Okay? That's that screw. The smaller bottom one is to prevent your split yokes from flying completely apart when you screw up and whack the thing. And you will, over and over and over again. It's how it goes, man. It's the joy of CW. And I'm going to show you something. Hang on. This, where is my pointer? Disaster has struck. Okay. So, that is the adjustment screw right there, right? To move the split yoke back and forth, making it parallel. You'll notice that it touches a screw that's been sharpened to a point. Why that is, I don't know. I suppose that, well, I guess it's so that as you turn this adjustment screw, this thing goes smoothly in or out and doesn't make crazy jumps like I said, will happen here if these aren't perpendicular. Okay, so that's the adjustment screw that changes the position of your split yokes. The bottom one keeps things from flying up completely apart. And let me demonstrate. Hang on. Okay, check it out, man. I tested this while you were paused. It's funny. The dip paddle's adjusted right. That shit hits the fan screw. My dial paddle isn't. And you know what's funny, man? When your transmitter starts unleashing a bunch of crap, you freak out. You freak out and you lunge at the paddle, and all you're going to do then is knock the other side off. Right? So I've got my monitor enabled on the rig and the braking function disabled, right? Check it out, man. Let's accidentally whack the DA paddle, and then I'll fix it as best I can. You'll note, though, even with the DA paddle, what to call it, an emergency stop screw, whatever, even though my DA paddle is set too far, it could be tightened up a little. The key is the spring doesn't come off, because if that happens, you're done transmitting for a little while you reset it up. Okay, let me screw up. Listen, you gonna freak out, or are you gonna calmly reach down and fix it? Right? But it didn't fly apart, right? It'll do that every time. And you pop it back on its pivots. And now that my key has settled down for 7 years, even after I whacked that like that, my spacing, exactly how I had it. Let me whack the dip paddle, and I'll show you what optimum setting of that screw will do. Right? It didn't even fly off the pivots. Oh, it didn't freak you out that time, did it? Okay, let me pause you and see if I can think of anything else. Hang on. Lastly, look at the contacts. These contacts are gold plated, of course. You won't find any solid gold contacts, nor would you want to. It'd be too malleable. But look at the alignment. It's just not worth fixing for me. At least the alignment, the spacing screw is perpendicular, so I can make changes, spacing changes, reasonably easy. And so, but the contact alignment, you know, and that's what you get with MFJ. And I'm not disparaging them, really. It's a reasonably priced paddle. Once you get it sorted out, it's a darn nice working paddle. If it weren't, believe me, I'd have a better quality one on the bench. See what I did there? I screwed up the word promise, but what are you going to do? Send a big word like that again, or you're just going to finish it? I finished it. So, there you go. A hints video that, as always, ran way too long. But it is what it is. Talk to you later, guys. Take care. 73.